Is that
Spot
wanting
on.
other people to validate Gold Star and condone the thing is what makes people not have the courage.
Correct.
Back to the French word, right? Cœur. So it's like the bravery to tell the truth of your own heart is really what courage is. So first of all, thank you all for being here. This is very exciting. I mean, Franklin, you gave us a chunk of time in the middle of your busiest week a year.
Thank you.
So I'm very excited about that. And Jayson, you too. And Reva had a show last night, so how epic. And the reason I asked the three of you to be in this episode of The Fiction of Limitation is because when I was writing the book, when I got to the rainbow chapter, which was important to me to show that we don't all just have to live in one experience. We don't have to live in this happy or in this joyful or this successing, that when we lean into all the truths of ourselves, that's when we actually thrive. And the three of you are just the embodiment of that to me for multiple different reasons, but most importantly, because you're all pioneers in different ways. You've all lived a life and continue to live a life that's your own way, even if no one else gets it or no one else sees it or no one else understands it. And that's a superpower in itself. And starting with you, I met you, you were a second old, literally. I love that you were so loved that you had all these nicknames. And I remember the first time you introduced yourself to the Sharif. I don't know if you saw him last night.
I did.
Yeah, he said, well, what is your name? And you said, my name is Reva, Nairi, Esther, Pumpkin, Precil. And that really embodies who you are, because you are all of those people and all of those names, but as one. I remember being in Brooklyn, you were 4 years old, and we were in a bodega, and the woman gave me a little bit of attitude, and you sucked your teeth. It felt like for 25 minutes. And at that moment, I thought, oh, right, you are literally the embodiment of who you are, and you've never changed. And that's amazing. And as I see you grow and blossom more and more into this really unique combination of gifts of music and dance and song and creativity, but also really secretly teaching people a lineage that's ancient, a spiritual divination that we don't know we hold, and making it just sexy. It was a big inspiration for me writing this book.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And you, Jayson. Yeah, good. Let's get lots of tears. Just, you've been, I keep saying, my ambassador of Kwan. I keep saying that from Jerry Maguire. Because every time I've gotten to a place where I've just cemented myself into the successing moment, you've always been there to turn me back around and say, maybe this way, or maybe look at that, or open up. And I was thinking yesterday that so many amazing people in my life, like Franklin, I knew through you. And you came into my life at a time where we were in the industry, in the music industry. And as a Black person in the music industry, there was only one way. And both of us got a lot of flack for that. Not choosing to just be in the Black music department, not choosing to just love one genre, not choosing to just be successful in music and not branch out into other ideas. And you've always done that. And you've always listened to your heart. And you've always come at that place where almost like there is no limitation. And that's not just a unique thing for a brown man in America, but it's also a unique thing for someone in the industries you choose, sometimes the friend groups you choose, the way you move around the world. And it's been a massive inspiration to me. And I don't think I'd be here if I hadn't had those examples from you all.
Thank you.
And then,
my mom used to say hard head, soft butt. And I like to say open heart, soft butt.
What? I'm here for the soft butt and the open heart.
Sorry.
And then one of those examples was one day you called me and said, "You're in LA? Well, we have to meet Franklin. He's a good friend of mine." And of course, like Jayson, no other information. We get to the LACMA Museum, and you all know that I'm obsessed with art and museums. And then you introduced me to Franklin, who just bigger than life in such a real way. I don't know if that makes sense. Like all this artistic knowledge, all of this accreditation of gifts, but really it was your passion of showing us the beauty and the art and the things that you created and you had a hand in this massive institution. You made it feel like we were there on our own private play date as friends. And even coming to the PAM, I think I told you that after the pandemic, every museum I went to had their one Black thing because, it was trendy.
It's true.
And it was cute, and I appreciate it. Fabiola Jean, so I'm saying it right, at the Met, I love, is a great friend of Nairi's, and so proud to the Met. But when I came to this museum, and you had really made a dedication of service to the not just brown art from around the world, but the complexities and the differences and the real beauty of each of their message coming from the lineage they came from and then the soup that they were in here. And that's not just brilliance. That's a love and an empathy for being in the artist experience. And I think that's what I'm really saying, that the combination that the three of you have of people who listen to your own heart, are guided by your own GPS, but also do massive things in the world, but are also always teaching, is really the only recipe for the way we can go in the future. So I'd love to hear from each of you what that means to you, how you got here, and and how do you feel you embody that? You want to start, Franklin?
Well, I mean, I'm just thank you for your words, for your guidance, for the way that you move about the world, because that's why we're here. And having you in our lives in that way, I think is the importance of this moment. So thank you for having me. I don't know. There's so many different ways through that question. I have my simple cliches in that I kind of grew up with a duality of art and creativity versus upward mobility and wanting to embody the Booker T. Washington ideals of up from slavery. You know what I mean? And I still feel like we're all guided by that to some degree. We're not in a place in this country or anywhere in the world, I would say for that matter, where we have the good fortune to forget about where we come from in the most challenging senses of the word. And so I think that's what part of this conversation is about, is the ability to, on one hand, balance that necessity versus something that is different, something that is unique, something that is endemic, I think, to each one of us. For me personally, it's always been about that balance. In a cliched way, I had seen a lot of artists that we would look up to, abstract painters in particular, and grew up around that. And my cliche is that I saw Jean-Michel Basquiat on the cover of the New York Times Magazine in February 1985 when we were in high school. And he had on this Armani suit and no shoes, and it was text behind him and color behind him, and it was just the confluence of everything. And I don't think it's possible to understate the effect of being born around the time we were born and being a part of what would come to be known as hip hop in some degree, and trying to find yourself within that. So I don't know. We could begin there, but there's a lot of different things that bring us here today.
And just to highlight what you're saying, I mean, what I received is that you were in high school and you were already kind of looking for something, and then this visual happened that turned you around because it was something bigger and more full and had more depth, and also was speaking to the things that you were feeling was a deficit in the world at large.
Absolutely. Which is the same today. As we try to figure out how to be better humans, as you mentioned, like leading with joy and seeing what is in people and finding the bridges between us rather than the divides between us.
Absolutely. Yes.
For me, so different. The first thing I heard in Frank describing that moment was the New York Times Magazine, which was not in my home, ironically enough. And I would probably say my friends were probably the biggest influence, of which Frank was and is a dear one. We grew up together, and it was actually going to places like his home, where there was Black art on the wall, and also where his dad had a penchant for cars. And he had 3 of the same kind of car. He had 3 911s, which was like...
Hold on, tell everybody what
911
is a car affectionado.
If you should know about cars, a 911 is the definition of sports and luxury. 911 Porsche. He had 3. So...
In different colors?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
And 1 target top, 1 hard top, 1 convertible. It was like, okay, 1 is enough. Like it's enough. It just created this moment of ambition. But after knowing he had 1, that he had 2 and 3, it's like, oh, there's a specificity in this is a worship of an automobile or beauty in a certain kind of way. And I saw past the fact that he could afford to do it, but the fact that he could afford to do what he wanted to do with what he had. That was so powerful. And as you know, I love cars, and I've owned 3 or 4 cars at different points, which is bananas. But yeah, we're seeing a man of color in the town in which we live that loud. That was, it was really powerful to me. And this was at a time where most upward to middle upper class Black folks were, you know, my parents were Cadillac and Lincoln people. They weren't Porsche people yet. And I was like, I want a BMW. They were like, you ain't getting nothing. Yeah, it was my friends and their legacies. And Frank brought up Booker T. Washington. Jeez, I don't think I read about Black writers and knew about Black writers until senior year in high school, maybe junior year with Miss Archer. Ironically enough, we had a white Black studies teacher who was amazing. And she would talk to these, you know, we were first generation integration kids. So she assumed our parents taught us about all these different people. And I would sit in that class and be like, I don't know about any of this. She was like, baby, you don't know about Baldwin? Oh my God, we're gonna get you. And she got me a bunch of Baldwin books and was like, you need to read those. And I thought it was for assignments, but it wasn't. She was just like, I'll never, ever forget her. So just this being ushered into a legacy, not through just stories, but through osmosis almost. A legacy of achievement, of overcoming obstacles. And then if you manage to do that, you can live on your own terms. Right. You don't have to live with anyone's boundaries of you and who you are. And then the one other thing I want to say about it is when I was in elementary school, and we had a big house and a pool in the backyard, and 2 of my friends came over to swim. They were 2 white kids. And we were horsing around and, you know, doing what boys do. And I guess it got a little rough, and one got held under a little too long, and he came up and he called me a, you know, bad word. And I had never heard it before. I didn't know what it meant because I grew up in, you know, before New Rochelle, I was in Harlem, and it was Puerto Ricans, Jews, you know, some Dominicans. It was everyone, and no one called each other anything because we were all striving to be better. And I didn't know what the word meant, and my brother heard it, and he made me get out of the pool, and he scolded me and said, don't ever let anyone call you that, and then told them they have to leave. So, you know, as I got older, you know, that word is like radioactive, it's toxic, but it's never felt that way to me. It's because the context in which it happened. Wait, you're in my backyard, swimming in my pool, and you got thrown out. I did. You had the nerve to say something that you knew was bad, and I didn't, and you got thrown out. So that word and all that comes with it, it never held me back in a way. It never shrunk me. So yeah, that felt important to mention too.
I love that. And also what I get out of that though is from the stories you've said already is you kind of came loaded, like I talk about Ms. Reva here, both of you with this kind of penchant for looking for the unordinary and being open to seeing what's not being seen. And that I want to get into more as we talk. But yeah, you definitely came embodying that. And also what's interesting about you is that you've taken, you know, you were raised in Haiti, and then you came to New York for high school, and then you just created a career for yourself that really out of your butt. You know what I mean? Like the concept of
soft butt.
Yeah, your soft butt. Just because, you know, even the influences that I know you have, you know, like I forget Isabel's mom's name. It's horrible. Lunice. Thank you. I'll never forget again. So did you ever feel that was a challenge, or did you feel supported and always leaning into that?
Well, I want to say first, thank you for all of the beautiful things that you've said, and just you also, how you were saying before, just like you've been such an inspiration. You've always lived exactly in your truth, and no matter what that looks like and how it feels to everyone outside, you've always just been you. And I've always, you know, you're my big sister, so you're my number one like inspiration. And so I think a big part of my blossoming into myself has been support. You know, it's so important to have your tribe around you love and support and sort of like uplift you in whatever it is that you're doing. So thank you for that. But yes, growing up in Haiti is the biggest part of who I am now. So like heritage is really important, spirituality, culture, preservation of all those things, educating, and then also modernizing it and making it sexy, how you said. But I feel that because I'm of mixed descent, because I'm of mixed race, because I'm half white and half Haitian, I feel that it it made me a bit more open in Haiti to explore more as sort of like an insider outsider, if that makes sense.
Completely.
Like I was in ceremonies sort of like as a tourist kind of vibe, because mommy was a tourist in the country. And so she would take me to all of these sacred spaces, whereas my peers who may have been born and raised on the land have never been to those spaces. So I grew up watching Lunis perform every week. I learned all the songs. I loved the dances. It was in me already. And so from a very young age, I immediately like found what what moves me, like the colors, all of the Haitian Vodou culture is like all of it, the melodies, the colors, the food, like everything, the herbs, the sacred spaces, all the different lacous that we have in Haiti, all of those things are just like really inspiring to me. And so, yes, I moved here as a teenager, which is a tough time to be relocated because, to really root yourself in your identity, it gets a little bit shaky if you're uprooted. And then now you're like, I'm a mixed girl in in Manhattan and at the Fame School. I went to LaGuardia and I never really found, I was an incoming sophomore, so I never found like my clique, if you will. And so, I found other inspirations during those times. I leaned into jazz music and learned a lot about jazz during that time. And I, joined gospel choir and all of those things are beautiful to me as well. But it wasn't until college where I went in New Orleans and the music director there was from Haiti. The music director was from Haiti, and he wanted to arrange these traditional Vodou songs with an orchestra, and he wanted me to sing them. And I just thought, like, what? Like, I've never seen that done before. Can you do that? Like, is it allowed? Is it okay? Because people are so sensitive about doing things a certain way and not changing it and not, leaving it as is. Because, anyways, that's a whole nother debate, like, in terms of preservation. Like, are we preserving it if we modify it, to adjust with the times? So I learned a lot of songs during that time, during my time in New Orleans, and fell in love in a different way with how to approach the songs. And then when I moved back to New York after school, when Reva, my dad, passed away, it felt like, okay, now I'm pressed for time to like really decide which way I want to go. And I felt like I need to create a project that is dedicated to this type of music, to my ancestors, to the spirits, to give this to them as an offering, and then sort of everything, came from that. I did my first album, that was in like 2014. Wow. And then everything, I created a dance class after that because I felt that the dance classes in New York that I attended were all very much dance based and not breaking down like the different rhythms with the different deities and the different elements and the different colors. So I teach a class now that is very much structured around like education, and it's open level, and it's not really about dance. It's more about understanding the roots of the folkloric movements. And then I created the events that I throw, that you've been to many, which are Vodou themed events, because so many people in the diaspora of Haitian descent or any, West Indian, African descent, they are often intimidated by like a voodoo ceremony. So they don't attend so I created these events to sort of open the gates and make it,
Sounds like
make it fun and make it educational, and people are learning unknowingly, like, okay, we're serving these dishes for this particular event, but all of the whole menu is curated for that particular spirit because that's what they would want to be fed. And so we're drinking this cocktail that was crafted specifically, so it's like a way to subliminally just share all that information. So I'm excited to keep building upon that and partner, and it wasn't done before in that way, and I see it more happening now with in the Haitian community and everywhere. I see people doing more events that are a bit more out of the box and a bit more voodoo inspired, and I love that, and I feel like it's okay, and it's just that there's so much stigmatism, and it's just such a taboo topic, especially for Haiti being the first free Black nation. The fact that there was a voodoo ceremony that happened before the revolution happened, and that really, set things off. It's such a topic that's not discussed enough. Like even, just getting people to talk about it more. And so to answer your question, it has been challenging, but I feel like that this is my purpose, and this is what I'm here for, and it resonates with those that it's supposed to resonate with. And I feel, that a lot of people have learned a lot and have taken away and have been inspired. And even if I inspired just a few people, I feel like the work is being done, and it's, gonna continue to grow and expand. And I'm just so excited to know who I am and to be supported by those around me in the work that I do.
Beautiful. Yeah, you all said some things that are really interesting to me, and a big passion of mine is creating. I love. You all know I love this expression, the hug and slap. Right? You bring someone in, and you're like giving them a little. But it's interesting that we brought up hip hop, and we talked about being young, and some of the things that come at us, right? And you think of hip hop, and I think of Ram.
Yes.
I get in trouble when I
they're
pronounce
like
these things as music of revolution, though, right? They're communications of revolution. Even hip hop is kind of a Morse code for people who weren't able to speak a language that translated to them their emotions, which was not allowed either, and their feelings. And so, all three of you use multiple mediums in your day to day, and I feel like I've ranted to you about this often, that a big part of what's happening now is we lost music and art in schools in the the mid 60s. I feel very intentionally, because that freedom and that expansion of multiple mediums of communication do bridge worlds and bridge gaps and give people an opportunity to share in the way that maybe they don't have words for or confidence to lead through. So do you feel like that? Do you feel like not necessarily your careers, but kind of the base note of your heart is this playful, creative experience that really brings people into a bigger understanding of themselves? Do you think so, Franklin?
I don't know. I think it's the bridge, like you said. The art can bring us together, it could be another means of communicating for people to express themselves in a way that could be healthy for the planet. That is kind of the raison d'etre of being in the museum space.
What's
actually the reason to be. I don't know why I said it in French, but
say it again.
It's good.
I just like that raison d'etre.
It's her. I think you two are. I want to say it.
It's like that other word that in German there's no other word for Gesamtkunstwerk.
Oh.
Right? It just means the total artwork. Right?
Can you say that again?
Gesamtkunstwerk.
Okay.
But it like total.
Yes, total.
And that's so the museum represents, I think, a total art space. It allows us to talk about music. It allows for us to talk about fashion. It allows for us to talk about dance. We had a performance yesterday, I think, before you performed. 76-year-old amazing Afro-Puerto Rican woman named Wilda Sterling, who did a dance performance. But when you look at what she has on, you might as well have been looking at a painting. It was just a painting that was moving. So I've always believed it to be that space that is flexible enough. The foundation for me was in writing, it was in words, and probably because not feeling necessarily like how to express creativity, right? Definitely not in my body, not in my, it's just, that's not me. It's not who I am. Like this is more comfortable. So that was the kind of genesis. And I think the guiding light is though the direction that you're pointing in, is that it is a space of education. The best thing we have here, we have this thing called PAM Teen Arts Council. And every year it's 14, 15 kids who are in high school who are artists, or maybe not even artists. They might be just trying to find their own form of creativity. They might just like telling people what they think about the art that's on view, which are basically budding curators. Right. I think that's one of the best things we do. And I said, we have 90% of what we do is that. Like we employ almost 20 teaching artists. So it is that is really the sense. I think, you can talk about a great painting and that gets headlines, but what we're really trying to do is education and process of education. Also feeling like I didn't go to graduate school. It's been about a school of learning and the value in that, in actually doing. You mentioned travel before. I think that's an important aspect for everything that we do as a foundation.
What about you, Jayson? I mean, you coming from music and being also loving music and being a manager and a producer and a director, do you feel that you're kind of creating a communication through your heart's passion?
Yeah, I think it's always been about the language of art and how it creates empathy. Because I grew up, obviously Black, but watched Benny Hill, SNL. I learned comedy through SNL. I learned British humor through Benny Hill. I learned, teenage humor through movies like Porky's and Revenge of the Nerds. And I began to understand that there were different languages in all these movies that were communicating different things. And it gave me empathy for a mostly white experience. But I grew up yearning for the language and the communication of a Black experience, or an experience I was living. But, Bingo Long and his Traveling All-Stars, Mahogany, all of those. And I was like, here it is. But then it would stop, but then it would start again, and it'd be weird movies like, where we're selling drugs, and that's cool for a minute. And then after a few of those, you're like, isn't there anything else? So I kind of grew up wanting to, and when I was of age, grew up wanting to be involved in stuff that I would have wanted to see as a kid. That's kind of my litmus test for jumping into something, right. Be it educational or just pure entertainment. But most of it is really educational for me. I didn't really know who Nina Simone was, again, until I was on tour with Lauren, and we were in Paris, and this woman got wheeled in the back of the stage and started screaming at people, and everybody started running, and Lauren's mother started crying, and I was like, okay. And that's when my antennas went up, and I was like, what's going on? Did she say something to you? And she was like, that's Nina Simone. It was all verklempt. And I was like, who's Nina Simone? And she looked at me like, Jayson. And she had to educate me. And then, I met her again. And who knew 15, 18 years later, her daughter would call and say, hey, I'm trying to tell a story about my mother. And I was like, yeah, of course. So it's this language to communicate our brilliance, our flaws, honestly, it's language to communicate that we're just as brilliant and flawed as anyone else in the hue and the spectrum of color. We're no better, we're no worse. We do some things better, we do some things worse. But there's empathy, just understanding what's going on with us. That's really what's at the heart of it for me. And I think that's the only reason why I'm courageous in anything that I do, and I'm not scared to pick up something I haven't done before, because I'm like, if it's coming to me and I haven't seen it before, then it's here for a reason. So let me just tighten my belt and like, you know, listen really closely and learn something, but push forward with the spirit of everyone needs to learn something about this person or this art form or this whatever. And it's always worked out. It's always worked out for better or for worse. And now it definitely gets lean in between it. And, you know, I turned 50 however long ago, 3 years ago. And we had a big party at my buddy Jeff's place up in New Rochelle, ironically enough, right? And there was this moment where I stopped and I looked around the room and I was just like, oh my God, who here can say I've slept on that couch at one point? And 90% of the people in the room raised their, and I was just like, and that's it. And those are the people that have been holding me when times got low and I didn't know where I was going to be living or, you know, stuff was happening. And that's community for me. That's
Starting 5.
That lean part, I'm sorry,
No,
that just
don't
reminds me
apologize.
of something. It's like, because you hinted at it at the beginning about this, and I don't think about it now, but when you talk about risk taking, the challenge, etc., like, and I think about some of the things, like, I'll never forget, it must have been like mid 90s, maybe. I was at JFK, I think, waiting to get on a flight to LA. I've probably been to LA maybe once or twice in my life at that point. I see this dude online. We chat and it's time to get on board. And we get on board. And Jay goes to the left and I go to the right. And I'm like, oh, all right, I see where we get off. Because he was in first, of course. And it's like your ability to come out of a commercial space and then to take the kind of risk that you've taken in terms of filmmaking and creativity is mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was always from that aspect of trying to cobble things together.
Right.
And so, you know, there's a certain amount of risk, I guess there is at stake. Like I'll never forget being in Italy, working in Italy, and realizing that my job was coming to an end and I had applied for another gig and I did not get it. And it just sitting there like, yo, what in the world am I gonna do? I have nothing, not a penny, no degree, but there's always a way. And thinking through that creatively and knowing that, and I think the only reason why we can speak from this place is that there's a faith in creativity and in your own personal ability to create something that somebody else is going to hold valuable.
100%.
Flash art. That was when you were writing for Flash art. I remember that. We were like, why is Franklin in Europe writing? When Frank went to Wesleyan for art history, we were like, wow. I don't even think people, well, in our circle, knew that was a viable degree. We were like, art history, wow, good luck, Frank. And then years later, people are like, oh, you know Franklin Sirmans? Like, I walk into rooms now and I love to say it. Like, do you guys know Franklin Sirmans? And they're like, you know Franklin Sirmans?
Yeah.
Oh my God,
It
how do you know
happens to me
Franklin
too. I love that. I think it's so fun. But that was my next question, and I want to get to you now, but I want to add that on top. But you hit where I was going next about, yes, we're all talking about how wonderful it is that we have these abilities and that we're excited about these passions and this understanding of all the range of art. But what are the limitations and how do you push through and who's there to catch you? You talked about tribe and family and support. I call it your starting 5, your people, your advisory board. But, there are a lot of times, and I've lived through, not so much with you, Franklin, but you have, but with you two, we've all had a lot of really hard times just betting on ourselves again and bringing that back to ourselves. So, I even think of you coming out of school, you had a dual major and jazz,
music therapy.
And
it was a psychology minor, but
and then coincidentally, I'm in the hospital for a surgery. They tell me that there's a music therapy program, and it's you.
Yeah, I showed up to her hospital bed with my guitar. And I was like, great.
I couldn't
You
speak.
didn't know it was
No, we didn't know. I didn't know who was coming either. I thought I was going to do some research because then I could go back and tell her because I knew she had that degree.
Yeah,
And I
was
couldn't
in my
speak because it was
residency there.
my voice. Yeah. It was wild. But so How do you deal with all that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lifelong process. I think, like coming back to self, we veer off sometimes, and then we have to, remember who we are. And everything I think happens for a reason. So when we meet those challenges, I think it's good for character building. I did study music therapy, and I don't. It's funny, I don't practice it like technically. I don't have an office, but I do believe that the work that I do is therapeutic
For sure.
and healing. So I did my my residency at Beth Israel Hospital, and I did it in the NICU. So learning about how sound can regulate the human body just it was a fascinating experience. And I traveled through the hospital and worked with all the different all the different kinds of patients, but the NICU was my place. And I guess I was there for pain, right? Or for relaxation. And yeah, it's, no coincidences, I believe. And I worked I worked in hospitality for some time also, where I was a maitre d', another French word. And that really helps me with my events that I do now. So I'm very, I also worked for a concierge company that was London based, but they had an office in New York. And all of those places that I had to go, for survival, have really shaped they added to my my bag of
Tricks.
of gems, or yes, of tricks. And they've all sort of helped me with sort of where I'm going now. And I think it's just I really like to tell myself, remember who you are, all the time. Whenever I feel like I'm sort of going a little too left or too right, or I need to just remind myself. And it's doing the things that, the little things, like how you encourage during your activations, I'll say, when you paint, what comes to mind, what's the first thing that you want to doodle. Those are those little things that I feel like are reminders of our essence. And yeah.
Well, we're all parents here, right? Whether we're parents of we are.
Some
I
more
don't.
than
I
others.
want to. I like to broaden. No, I like to broaden the concept of parents, because when you're birthing anything, it's your baby.
Yeah.
And when you're putting your full heart in something and your full passion, and it's your baby. And so when you have something, that whether it's an idea, a business, a concept, a piece of art, a human, there is an idea that you want to impart things to them, that you want to infuse in them. And I've seen with my family and my friends, now that I'm 53, I can see people's a big part of their life cycle, the people that come in really ready to just be in their own truth, and the ones who are really wanting to follow the rules. So how do you inspire yourselves to stay inspiring to people who maybe can't access that? And is that a part of your day-to-day, realizing that every interaction and every connection with another person is a potential inspiration for their own unfolding? And is that a part of your day-to-day? How do you lean into that? Is that a practice of self? I know for me, I have to do a lot of things every morning to stay really in my heart, because I'm in complete dedicated service to learning it more and growing it more, and knowing that I'm the chief energy officer of my life. I want to make sure that I'm bringing that energy to other people. It really starts with me doing that work. So what are your practices? How do you feel about that? Do you feel that intentional when you're impacting other people? I mean, your job alone in life is full, and you also have a family.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interaction with others that we all have. So I'd love to hear, I mean, even some of the threads of that was doing a career you've seen someone never have before. Yeah. So we do things in our own world where we really inspire the people to open up further. Do you see that as intentional?
I think it's changed. I think it's changed for me over time. When I was younger, I had this thing similar to your starting five that I call the coalition of the willing.
Yes, you wrote that
find people that want to do the same thing as you, and just click up and get through it. But I find as I get older now that anytime someone throws a little bit of doubt on that dream or that idea, it just hits different now. it used to hit like, but as you get older, and maybe this is me coming into my own space of understanding or acknowledging that I'm an artist, because I've been working in service to artists and art for such a long time. And I'm now stepping into that space of being one, and I'm way more fragile than I thought I was as a creator, so much more fragile. And I'm like, oh, I can't talk to too many people about what I'm doing. I got to hold this myself, and I've got to do all the heavy lifting and get out there and push and build the frame, if you will, and find people that might want to help me, put the insulation in and do all of the other stuff. But so I'm going a little more inward now, which I guess makes sense if I'm taking on an artistic endeavor.
But I think that's an inspiration too. You know, I feel like if even making a practice of your life of having something that's your baby, that's really what I was saying. There's practices and rituals around that. And I feel like a lot of creative people say that anyone who pioneers anyone, it's such a fine line to insanity because only you can see it. So it really does take practice and a life experience of like, I'm going to hold this here until it's formed enough that you can experience it as my intention.
With other people, yeah.
And so I love that too. And I think that's something you're teaching because you live a very outward world. And to show people that I'm going to pull something in because I believe in it that much is, I feel like, a big part of that, connecting with the people and giving them inspiration in that way. And I also think that you really have a gift of seeing people's gifts. And so I can imagine that even in your just day-to-day conversations, you're giving people some inspiration and some gems of the next step on their own path.
Yeah, it's helpful for me, actually.
Yeah. What is the expression? What heals you, or what you teaches, or what's the expression? There's a famous expression. What you're teaching teaches you. That's what it is. What you're teaching teaches you.
Yeah, I think that remind me
just that the fact that we're inspiring other people, right? We've hit these limitations and
sorry.
No, I did the same.
I have work to do in that regard. I
real.
do. I really always admire your daily rituals. You are the queen of setting yourself up for success every day, and I need to be more intentional with that. I think my children are small, as you know, so it's like I think that's my excuse right now. That's my current excuse. It's hard, but I would like to carve out some more time to ground myself in the morning. But for me, how I like check in with myself is if I'm like not moving a lot, if I'm not dancing, then I know like I'm not operating in my highest capacity. I have to be able to dance, and there'll be times where I don't dance for a long time. And then like when I do again and I tap back in, then I'm like, oh, there she is, like, hello, good to see you again. And I feel that like with what you were saying about whether it's intentional or not, when we're inspiring people, I feel like it's just subconscious. Like sometimes I don't even realize the impact or the reach that some of the work that I've done or am doing until it's concrete and in my face and someone like tells me directly. I just am, and then it sort of, the work is being done, Yeah.
I beg to differ too. I feel like, yes, you have young children. That's very complicated. But you're such an inspiration to me in that I find a lot of people have children and then want to get back into their real life, right? They want to like, okay, we got the kids, they're here. Now I'm going to get back here. And as I've watched you as a mother, which is fascinating, to see you in this way. And you really are in the practice of playing and learning and exploring with them. And you do that in such a, in real service to whoever they are blossoming into being. That is something that if we could, as parents of even employees and communities could do that, we'd have a different life because we, as people who look into safety and lean into our brains, we want to impart this wisdom that often is the demise. I love to make the joke, oh, you got into Columbia University. And as your mom, I'll say, you're not really cut out for a big city. And we do these things that we think are safety, but we're really smalling each other. And children 0 to 7 have no analytical mind. So whatever you tell them, they believe it. They're in it. It's their reality. And I feel like I hear you. Yes, maybe more everyday dancing, but it's such a beautiful thing. And it was interesting to also lean into realizing, because you don't have this American concept of parenting, you lean into this much more global idea that you're in this new experience together. And it's all first-time parents or amateurs. That's the only way to do it.
Thank you for that acknowledgement. I received that.
I see it in them too.
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you.
There's a space of ritual that I know if I am attentive to it and allow that to be part of my everyday, then I know I'm be able to give more and to be more in the moment and be super present with people if I get that. So the 2 ways that I have gotten that is that I do play a lot of tennis, and that's the balancing part. And some of the people I play with were out here at the party the other night, and with Linda and them, actually. And without them, I know I don't function the way that Franklin needs to function without them. So last Saturday, that's where I was. I was playing doubles with these dudes. So there's that. And part of that is the second thing that I wanted to bring up in terms of what you said was that, and it's funny, you said maybe you're not cut out for the big city. So I'm from New York originally, right? But my whole career life has been outside of New York, in Houston, Los Angeles, and here. And obviously those 3 places share some things in common, but some things not. But what they do allow for me to do is to have a different kind of work-life balance in order to be as present as I can be. I know I'm not the same person in New York.
Wow.
I'm just not.
I overstand.
Yeah.
I overstand. I'm in New York. I'm like, okay. And then I'm not doing anything I need to get done. It's hard, when you come from a place. I know that all 3 of you have a short on time, so I'm going to get to some fun items. This is
all fun.
Yeah. So I want you to say?
This is all fun. I mean, the way that you do this thing, come on.
Okay, good. So when I was writing this book, I don't know, I think I judged myself, as Reva said perfectly before, about being, I love to say, mixed before it was trendy, a single mom before it was trendy, all these things. And so it was getting to know myself, was looking at the things that I love that have shaped me, movies and references and experiences. And you talked about a few, but I'd love to hear if each of you were a pizza pie and you're going to split it up for everyone in this room to eat. What are the things that are in that pie that really make up who you are today in terms of what you've absorbed from the things around you?
I'm going to draw my pie as I think of my answer.
Oh, wow. That's a good one.
Anybody wants to jump in there first?
Film. Film is, for me, is a big part of it because artists make films. And all kinds of artists, commercial artists, weird artists, independent artists, quirky artists, artists with resources, artists who don't have resources. And to make a film, you got to really want to have something to say. It became a language for me early on in referencing.
Can you give us the top 6 of those films that when they hit your heart, you said, this is where I'm going to ride this train?
Yeah, Scarface. No, I'm just kidding. No. Certainly, the Godfather series were huge. I didn't come from a big family, so it wasn't like family. And I learned. I began to empathize with people from big families by watching that, and how families' projection upon what you should be or shouldn't be, how impactful that can be. I never had that. My parents didn't want me to be anything. So I loved watching stuff like that. For silliness and fun and joy, just those crazy movies from the 80s that were like about high school kids getting into trouble, from Risky Business to, again, Porky's, Revenge of the Nerd, like all of that, just silly stuff. Airplane is still one of the most impactful movies in my life. Just the
nice beat jive.
Just the shit. They made fun of everyone. They did. And they made fun of fun.
Yes.
And they made fun of Harry Krishnas. They made fun of the seriousness of pilots. And it let me know that, like, oh, you can laugh at things that are true. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I could laugh at myself, laughing at jive and what all of that meant. And and obviously important TV shows. Like I never understood All in the Family, and then shout out to Norman Lear who died recently. I never understood All in the Family until I got older, and I was like, oh, they were breaking down really tough issues in a fun way. I thought he was serious. I didn't know it was satire.
Yeah.
So I was angry a lot of the time watching it, but then I got older and I realized like, oh, this is satire. This is how you actually approach tough things. And I see that today in animation with what Seth MacFarlane does with Family Guy or any of that weird stuff. They take on really tough issues, but it's cartoon drawn characters. So you hear it differently. You almost hear the absurdity of it in a lot of ways. So that music, which, you know, Frank and I come from the same backgrounds, and so do you, Grace. I mean, we were listening to New Order and Depeche Mode and the Smiths in the same mixtapes as Public Enemy and KRS-One, and just the breadth of that, and then going to all of those shows in the city, which is one great reason to be in New York, or Europe for that matter, is you get to see all of that stuff like relatively cheap. You see it before it becomes big, so you get the culture of the music as opposed to the presentation of the big thing. And really, which may not be a popular thing, but growing up around diverse cultures, you know, growing up with racist Italians as well as racist Irish, as well as racist, all of them, racist black folks, racist, all of it. And you're just like, you
Shout
get
out
the
to
absurdity. Shout out to racist black folks. You see the absurdity of racism in its entirety. I like to say that era that we came up in, which is 80s, and we graduated in 87, right? Yeah. Is like three things seem to unite all of our worlds. Music, because hip hop was coming of age. Sports, because when you're on a sports field, it doesn't matter what color you are. Either you get your job done or you don't. And shout out to Frank and New Rochelle High School, state champions in '87. And then weed. Everybody was like, you were weed curious, or you were high, or you were whatever. But everyone, you were just around it, and like even if you didn't do it, you were like, are they having more fun than me? And so people were just like, and it united people. Guys from the projects would come to parties we had in the North End and be like, y'all had a blunt before? And the white cats would be like, what's a blunt?
Right.
And they'd be like, have you had a bong hit? And you just saw it happening all right there. So any kind of entertainment that speaks to a specificity of culture, that then you could take that specificity and get empathy from it and some understanding around it, but then enlarging it to like, well, what's specific about your thing that they're going to get and understand? And that's where this confluence begins to happen, and it gets really weird and fun.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was something that you said earlier about, something that's all of you said that I wanted to speak about, particularly when times get hard. I was listening to your story, which I never heard before. You were always going to be what you were going to be. You were born in Haiti and then decided to go to music school in New Orleans. Your path was laid out. You just, thankfully, you listened. Like you were open enough to be like, oh, let me do this, let me do that. And I look back at the experiences I had, and I was like, what else was I going to be doing? It was all right there. And I think the courage really is softening enough to just hear that thing inside that's like, you don't want to go to law school, even though I applied. You don't want to go to med school because you can't. You don't want to be, what people think you should be. No, you should work for free for a couple of years in the music business. Who knows? Everyone else is going to grad school or doing something amazing. Yeah, it sucks. You're living under someone's roof. You're making $250 every 2 weeks, but it's going to work out for you. Like whatever that voice was that drove me to do it, because it felt comfortable. It felt like it made sense for me. Maybe not for other people, but for me. So yeah, I think we all had similar experiences that was like, no, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And now that you look back at it, you're like, how like the fact that I don't know music or didn't know enough Black history really was so advantageous to me when it came time to experience things for the first time, because I had what some call beginner's mind, or what does that say? God protects fools and babies. I've been both most of my life. So however that works, it just gives you an openness to receive things as opposed to categorizing them from what you may know in your own mind.
That's very true, because it's that wanting other people to validate, gold star, and condone the thing is what makes people not have the courage.
Correct.
Back to the French word, right? Cœur. So it's like the bravery to tell the truth of your own heart is really what courage is. And so that this is the concept of this conversation, the fiction of limitation, because limitation is a fiction.
Absolutely.
But if you buy into that story, it's debilitating.
Yeah.
And you three are my heroes of not buying into that story. But it's not an easy thing for most people.
Yeah.
It's really the one step in front. Deirdre and I have been following this Al-Anon group, and we can hear over and over that the biggest issue is not that people don't believe they're pioneers or believe they have something magical, but they don't feel safe enough to stray away from the pack to trust themselves to have it. So that's a really big, that courage. I'm glad you brought that up. What's your pie, Franklin?
Oof, I mean, that was pretty spot on. I don't know. I'm just, it's that diversity of experience, that trying to find the place where things don't make sense and having a belief in that is the place of some degree of power, some degree of creating something valuable.
Right.
It's the path is just, I guess in some ways it can be inscribed, but it's about the voices you listen to. And I just feel I've been fortunate. I mean, you touch on the people around you. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I may not have been in the music business, but I went to school with this guy. I went to grade school with DJ Stretch Armstrong, and then I went to college with his friend Babito, and then we were in school with Brand Nubian. And there's a faith in the unknown and in the places where you're a little bit uncomfortable as well, and feeling from a very early point that it's okay to be a little bit uncomfortable. When I went to Italy, I did not speak Italian. They were like, I was like, what kind of insurance you got? They were like, don't worry about that. We take care of you. Got the cash under the table every month. This space of just saying, it's going to be all right. Yeah. You have a guiding light in some fashion. And so much of that is based in spirituality and not being necessarily a part of a church or a given space all the time, but always knowing and believing very strongly in a degree of spirituality. So those are some of the kind of things. Just thinking about that. I mean, Jay touched on like the when you're listening to the Smiths, and it segues into, like, if you think of the nihilism that we listen to now a lot, or that we hear a lot in terms of where hip hop is coming from, it's a different kind of nihilism than I think that more punk inflected, somewhat internal liberatory struggle. So I'm trying to find the space between those things, but being open to that is because of the foundation that was set very early on. I feel blessed for the people out around me that allow me to
that's
take
a
those
crazy
chances.
similarity you just drew in the nihilism. Like,
It's crazy, yo.
like we listen to punk or whatever alternative, and they were just talking about like drinking and killing themselves. The greatest authors in American history were all drunks, and some of them did kill themselves.
Exactly.
And we have the nerve to sit and listen to young men of color and whatever these environments they come from talk about getting drunk and high and killing themselves, and act like, oh my God, how could they say that? That's a part of art, isn't it? Like, artists are always questioning whether they're doing the right thing or not. And sometimes that voice gets so loud, it literally drives them crazy. I didn't understand art until, like, seriously, didn't understand it until on a trip to Amsterdam, I went to the Van Gogh Museum and I read his story and I was like, yo, I'm done. This dude's brother did what? He paid for everything? And then the wife was there just like, fine. Move to the city, move to the country, move back to this, like, and then he died? Oh man, and that's when I never understood the story of art. It's about the artist behind it and like what pushes them to that. And I was forever changed just from reading his story. Forever changed.
Beautiful story.
So yeah, it is.
I mean, that's many conversations because in that conversation, the concept, I love to quote Neil Brennan, the comedian, because he says that the only time Black men are allowed to be sad in public is when they have a saxophone. And I think there's really is a concept, and it also ties back into what Nye was saying about, the significance of where Haiti is and how they used a spiritual form to kind of create a massive change that they will forever be punished for. And so I think that, one of my favorite groups as teenagers was the Suicidal Tendencies. They had no flack from that name. And so that's a whole thing in itself. But can you tell the people who are 6 what nihilism means, please?
I don't know how you say falling prey to defeat personally and collectively. I think the problem with now is that it's so collective. Right? When you listen to 21 Savage, it's collective. It's not just about him.
Right.
It's not all of us, unfortunately. It's the opposite of everything that we're talking about.
Right.
It's
leaning into
no hope. There's nothing. And we know that's not true, but
Yeah.
It becomes a pervasive feeling, especially when you are a pioneer of anything. Right. I went to the first time the Sagrada Familia and stood there and cried because I understood the story that his family couldn't understand his dream for this architectural dream that has circles and no faces, and they put him in a mental institution for many, many years. And what a fine line that is. And if you don't have a starting vibe, a community, people who see you and hear you, I could see how that could quickly lean into nihilism because where are you going to go with that gift?
It's Noah Purifoy, the whole aspect of this artist who was Los Angeles based, and in the 1960s with what happened in terms of the Watts Rebellion, being a teaching artist at the Watts Towers, he saw so much in that period that he had to drop out, and he moves out to the desert and spends the next 20 years of his life creating sculptures just for himself into this desert kind of environment that one can experience now, but he could not take the reality of where we were at that given point in time. And I feel like a lot of people are going through that right now.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
As I was writing out my slices on my pie, heartbreak was one of them. Like, I feel like ever since a very young age, like I've always like carried this like old woman's heartbreak. I'm this like sad old woman. Like there's a story that you always tell.
Yeah, in New Jersey at Keisha Sutton's house, and we go to the supermarket to get some food. And I always had
I was 4. I wasn't born in Haiti. Also, I wanted to like just say that
she was
because we're
born
in the
in New
age
York.
of information and accuracy.
I dragged her to every recording studio of the Native Tongues early days because I was babysitting all the time. It was me in a front carrier. People thought she was my kid, and we were at every session. But she's 4 years old, and we're in the supermarket, and I hear on the radio the SWV song comes on. Weak. And I'm just like, oh, beautiful. And then all of a sudden I hear some woman singing it like an old Negro spiritual, like belting it out. And I literally look all around, and then I finally look down and she is singing. I mean, she's like, she's holding her chest. I was like, something's going on in there.
Yeah. And I really leaned into a lot of that music in high school. I mean, a lot of emo teenagers, but like Nina Simone, Billie Holiday was like my go-to girl. Sarah Vaughan, just really sad music. So I think that's a part of
Yes,
me.
100%.
Heritage is a big slice. Spirituality, music, of course, dance, art, and magic. Magic is a big one. In any and everything, but just like I used to, make potions out of like flowers and things that I would find and like be crushing leaves like from really young. And I do that on a different scale now, like creating my own Florida water, or like space spray, or making like a manifestation oil. It's just like continuing to be that little kid, making things out of nature's gifts, and doing that now as an adult.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I love you all. We're going to do the gift to the next off camera. But if there's anything that you feel inspired to say or share around this concept of of not letting limitations hold you back, of moving into your bigger dreams every second of your life and being the embodiment of that for all who don't have that ability, the capacity, the belief of the capacity that they have that ability.
I've always found that the bigger the resistance to the thing that you're doing, the bigger the opportunity for greatness around it.
Beautiful.
That's really good. Thank you for that.
That is true.
Yeah, Deirdre, again, because she's staring at her, said this thing to me the day that I just blew my mind. And I've been sharing with everyone because, I like to check things off and get a gold star and keep moving. And she was saying that when she became a black belt, she was like, I did it. I'm at this place. And then her teacher said to her, great, now the work begins. And I feel like that's a big issue we're having with the mental health crisis now, and that we have a generation, we were talking about this morning with Terrence, about the younger generation really wants handouts. They really want things to be easier. I feel like our generation, specifically us, not you, we had it so rough, the first latchkey kids, and we wanted our kids to have a better experience. But what they missed in the heartbreak and the hard work and the trying and the workshopping and not having a concept was the belief that they could step out in faith.
Yeah.
And so I find that concept and back to the fiction of limitation, marrying to me in the book the rainbow of us, because it's knowing that I'm this and I'm this and I'm this and I'm this, and all those things are my truth and all those things are beautiful, and they weave into each other to make the recipe of who I am, is the fear, is the greatest fear right now as everything else around us becomes more uncertain. So any thoughts? You don't have to have any. I know I'm just trying to milk every delicious thing out of you all three.
Yeah, just trying to with a 13-year-old daughter, trying to keep that flame alive, and it's so hard. Obviously, I used to have, I still do to some degree, an intense fear of heights at times, and the only reason I got over it, at least enough for skiing reasons, is because my daughter made me get on some rickety friggin' gondola and go all the way up, and it was absolutely nerve-wracking the whole way, like sitting there like this the whole way and watching her just go doo, 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 doo. But now, that was 10 years ago, and now, or 8 years ago, and now I see how the world tries to stifle the flames, right? Tries to get you to conform to certain aspects of who you are. And so just trying to find a space in order to keep this kind of conversation a part of the everyday, and to keep that thing open. And I think the easiest and best way is through television and film, and through art, and through experiences with books and experiences with music. It happens.